Where did that mindset come from?
Ambition for me is not a destination. I've never been one of those people that says, when I get to this, when I have this, when I do that. That's never been my thing. I gotta stop. We are third in the world on median wealth. Third in this country.
Third? Wow. Welcome back to That Backyard Property Podcast. I am very, very excited for today's guest. A father, husband, author, podcaster, business owner, mentor, much more. Today we have the founder, no longer CEO, but founder of Capital Partners, David Andrew. Welcome.
Hey, Mike. Nice to be with you.
It's so good to have you in. It's funny when you're looking at doing the podcast, you're like, who can I get in? And you were sitting right there. I mentioned this to Catherine as well, Creasy, that you were both right there because you both offer so much in different ways, but coming from the same kind of story in a way based on Capital Partners.
Well, having said all that, I hope I don't disappoint your audience now.
You
I hope I've got something useful to give on a sunny Monday.
You will. It's I always enjoy listening to you talk. And I'm excited for today. So.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed, Mike, with your success because I met you as a young lad who'd just moved down from Darwin, and we were introduced through Northcote Surf Club. And would you be happy to mentor this guy? And I can't believe where the relationship's gone. It's incredible. How long ago is that?
I think that was 2018.
Get out.
Started 2018, and we sat on the veranda at Northcote, the old
the old Blue Duck,
the old Blue Duck.
That's right.
We sat on the veranda there, and we had a good chat.
And you've financed us. You've financed all of our three boys. You've probably financed half of their social network. So it's pretty cool.
They know a few people.
Yeah,
especially Lockie.
He's a good referrer, right?
He is.
He knows how to connect people.
He's going to be on here.
Is
in
he?
Due course.
Bless.
Keep an eye on it.
Love it.
So I started today's chat by talking about at home because obviously we're involved in property, but it's just so much more than bricks and mortar. Yeah. And it's very cliche to say, but it's so much more than that. You've recently gone through a change in home as well and what that means, and you've raised three boys in a home. What does home mean to you?
Yeah, well, the best way I can respond to that is we have just sold our home of almost 30 years. So two of our boys have known no other family home. And no one's at home anymore. They're all doing their own thing. But it was a big deal. We bought that house in about 1994 for $358,000. And it was, one street from the river. It was a wreck. It was a complete wreck. And so moving out and selling it recently was hard. And Robin was more emotional about it than me. I think I was sort of just so busy with work stuff, and we'd made the decision. Once I've made a decision, I don't look back. But for Robbie, it was really hard. And I said to my dad, who's 90 this year, I said, Dad, Rob's really struggling with this. He said, David, don't worry about it. She'll be fine. He said, because your home is where your heart is. And he said, the moment you walk out of that, I'm actually feeling a little bit emotional for the first time, weirdly. He said, the moment you walk out the door and you close the door behind you, he said, it's no longer your home, it's just a house, and it's someone else's home. And it's true. And the beautiful thing about that was that it was bought by a young Mosman Park family.
Have you driven past it?
I've been past twice, but we know them. Oh. We actually know them. It's bizarre, but one degree of separation. They're really good mates with Robin's nephew and his wife. It's crazy. So Evie, their daughter, walked into the house and said, oh, well, I know where everything is. And, it's just her.
Actually been to the house.
Oh, yeah. Robin used to babysit her at our place. So Evie, their daughter, knew the house better than the new owners knew the house.
Yeah.
But look, what's a home? It's just that was such a special house to us. We renovated it twice. It was on nearly 1,000 square metres. We had three really active boys who used to play footy and cricket and hockey. Tim basically smashed the asbestos fence down, hitting hockey balls against it. They absolutely traumatised all the neighbours. But geez, it was great. It was so much fun.
Can you still hear the laughter and the good times? Or
Well, when we bought it, in your mind's eye, picture this. When we bought it, it's a 100-year-old house, old tuck-pointed Federation-style house, high up on the hill in Mosman Park. And we never thought we could afford to buy in that street. The only reason we could afford to buy in that street because it was so bad. It was just a wreck. And so it was literally a 2-bedroom house with a little lean-to kitchen with the floor eaten by white ants. So it was a tiny little house, probably 100 square metres of house on nearly 1,000 square metres. So the backyard was huge, and it had these 3 massive peppermint trees. Yeah. So it was an oasis. Yeah. So up until the first renovation, it was just this enchanted garden that our kids would hang out in.
Because how old would they have been?
Lockie was 1 when we bought the house, and Jeremy was born at York Terrace, and Timmy obviously was born at York Terrace. So yeah, crazy.
That's all they knew.
Yeah, and having sold it, it's fine. Like we're good with that, and we're building a house around the corner, and that's a new project, and that's fun, and we're renting somewhere else now, and it's not much of a place because it's not easy to get a rental, but just the location's different, and we're out of the valley, we're out of Mozzie Park, and we're just enjoying it. So it's fun.
Did you end up renting an apartment?
No, we couldn't. We couldn't.
Oh,
we couldn't get one.
That's
what we wanted to do, right? We wanted to try apartment life, Because Robbie and I lived in Hong Kong for a while, and we lived in a tiny little 2-bedroom apartment, and we really enjoyed that life. You know, you just don't spend any time at home. You're out and about the whole time. No, we couldn't get one, so we're in a little house in Claremont.
It's obviously we're going through we've got a nearly 5 and a 2-year-old, and we're seeing the fun, the laughter, the tears, all those childhood memories that they're creating and having, and I can just sort of, in some ways, picture what it would be like being in your position, having just moved away from it, but it doesn't remove those memories.
No, I don't dwell too much on that. The attitude I've always taken again, I said earlier, I don't really look back. I have very fond memories of our kids growing up, but I've always been determined that every stage of life, you know, the toddler phase, followed by the young kids age, the curiosity of little boys, followed by the primary school, high school, every stage has been better than the last. You know, and it's now you get to the point where your kids are 30, 28, 26. You don't really even think of them as kids anymore. And yet they'll always be our kids. But, you know, they're living their own lives, they're doing their own thing, and it's just great. Every stage is better than the last. Yeah. And that's my mindset. And my mindset is, because I'm a bigger future thinker, so my future is always going to be bigger than my past. So bigger and better than my past. And so whatever happens with my kids, you know, my job is to help them have bigger futures, and just really enjoy the journey and enjoy life for what it is.
It's about the journey as well. That's
where
you
totally.
Get the most satisfaction from it.
Absolutely.
Where did that mindset come from? Was that passed down from dad or parents?
No, not really. I think I'm a very curious person. I like knowing how things work. I like growing. So our business has grown a lot over the years, and it's not. And we can talk a little bit about this. Ambition for me is not a destination. I've never been one of those people that says, when I get to this, you know, when I have this, when I do that. That's never been my thing. I've always I see ambition as a mindset. So my ambition is I always want my future to be bigger than my past. And I asked my dad a few years ago, you know, he was 87, because I remember the conversation. I said, Dad, can an 87-year-old have a bigger future? And he paused and he said, yeah, I do. You know, Mum's in care and my responsibility to help her out, and I look forward to my exercise every day, and I look forward to when I see family, and I just thought, wow, that's amazing. An 87-year-old having the context and the viewpoint of, yeah, I can have a bigger future. I think that's what keeps me feeling positive about the world. I don't get wrapped up in getting concerned about the world and, you know, current events, even this rubbish that's going on with Donald Trump. I think we're going to be okay. He's going to be there for 4 years. He's going to screw a whole bunch of stuff up, and then we'll move on. You know, I just don't get wrapped up.
Because it does just move on.
Yeah, I just don't get wrapped up in that. So I'm onwards and upwards.
I remember listening to your podcast with your son, and you were talking about the GFC and how you had to, you were as business owners, the three of you, and you had to remove salary from what it was in terms of the company because of the GFC. And so I can just imagine you've been through so many different cycles and you've come out the other side having continued to be there. So you're still there.
Yeah, no, I do some stuff, Michael, that I think your listeners probably should think about. Yeah. Like, I make sure we've always got money in the bank. There's been one occasion where and it was during the GFC, where we were sailing really close to the wind because we'd bought an investment property, paid too much for it. Thank goodness interest rates went down as much as they did, because otherwise it would really have hurt. But my learning from that, both in my personal life and also in business, is that we make sure we've got a really meaningful cash buffer. You know, and you know our circumstances well enough to know that, you know, we've just used offset accounts effectively for years now, and we've given up the debt trap, so we don't have credit cards, and we do, but we don't really use them. And you know, you just my attitude is to life. Life is always going to be topsy-turvy. There's always going to be stuff going on. So my attitude is, I don't care what happens in the world, the economy, the financial markets, in geopolitics. I'm going to make sure we're okay. You know, the world's not fair. We know the world's not fair, right? But you can tip the scales in your favour significantly by doing a relatively small number of really smart things.
Constantly.
Make them habits. Yeah. Have a cash buffer. Yeah. Have a positive mindset. You know, there's and a growth focus, a future growth focus. And it's all really mindset stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
There's a really good speaker, Jim
I hope
Rohn.
This is not going to be boring.
No, I love it.
I'm thinking, you know, I'm talking about how I think, and who's going to be interested in this?
I love it. And someone, Jim Rohn, I don't know if you've ever come across Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn.
Okay, so Jim Rohn's all about what you can control. Yeah. That's what and it's all mindset.
The art
what you can
of
control.
exceptional living.
Yeah.
I've given hundreds of copies of that book, The Art of Exceptional Living, to young people who I admire. I admire the track they're on. And it's just great lessons for life.
Yeah, I've still got the CD copy of it, and I don't really know how to listen to it now, so I'm going to just have to read the book again. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Dialing it back to Capital Partners. Sure. Where, like, you've come on this amazing journey, 30 years now?
It's 26 years
26 years this year. That's some longevity, and you've seen a lot, and you've grown this business into something that's so much bigger than you, which is what, as a business owner, you hope to achieve, something to be bigger than yourself. How did it originally start? Were you always thinking that you were going to be an entrepreneur and you're going to be a business owner, or did it just kind of happen?
I have a favourite saying, you know, success leaves subtle clues, and there were some indications that I had an entrepreneurial spirit when I was very young. So lived in Sydney till I was about 6 or 7, and obviously I don't have consciousness of this, but my family tell stories, my mum and dad tell stories about how I would go door to door selling things. One day it was pumpkin seeds in envelopes. Another day it was old newspapers. Yeah. Another day it was raffle tickets in a raffle whose prize was yet to be decided.
It's such a telltale sign.
Yeah, yeah. And so I can only join these dots ex post. I couldn't have done it then. But I used to get really frustrated in the corporate world. I used to be, every now and I had a couple of bosses who were complete deadbeats, right? And I just think, how the hell did you get to the top? You're a fair dinkum idiot. Yeah. And maybe that was just my arrogance as a young man, but I really did realise quite early on that I was not going to be able to play the politics. I have a certain style that is, reasonably direct. I'm very much a teamwork guy. I love building teams and creating effective teams. And that does work in the corporate world, but most people are self-interested first. It's not about all for one and one for all first. It's what is my interest first, and then I'll be a team player. And that's human nature. I get that. So I jumped off the corporate track when I was, probably 35 to start this business. Robin and I had come back from living in Hong Kong to be in Perth. We wanted our kids to grow up around their grandparents.
So both sets of grandparents are in Perth?
Yeah. All four of whom are still alive, which is unbelievable for kids our age to have all four grandparents who are all brilliant. Like their mental acuity is sound, they're physically, they have their best days, they have their good days and their bad days. But at about the age of probably about the age of 33, I guess. That'd be right because Tim was around. I got the opportunity to move to Sydney in a national role, so it's pretty young for a job like that, and head of sales or head of distribution or whatever it would have been. And I hopped on a plane and I went over and I met the relocation agent and I found a house and all that stuff. And Robbie called me that afternoon because mobile phones had been invented then. And I was sitting in the back of the cab and she said, "You sound agitated." And I said, "Yeah, I am. I'm stuck in a traffic jam and I'm just thinking that this is going to be your life. Like I'm going to be fine because I'm going to be on a plane and travelling around the country and doing my thing. But you're going to be stuck in Sydney traffic, ferrying kids to kindergarten and then play school and then sport and all this stuff." And then I thought, hang on a minute, do I really want to spend my life on a plane? And so I bailed. I bailed from that job.
Such a turning point.
Yeah, it was a massive, what do they call them? Sliding doors moments. That's the first moment I have in my life of having made a really deeply values-based decision. I often laugh with Robbie and say if my ego had got in the way, and I would have been tossed on the heap. I would have either got to the top and been CEO of something, or I would have not made it because I just have my personal style doesn't suit everyone, I guess. That's true of everyone. But I came back and my boss said, "Oh, well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to start a financial planning business," because I'd been in financial services. So I saw the best and the worst of financial planning and financial planners. And I used to get asked by advisors, "Help me move this client's money from here to your product." And in the process of doing that, that back in the day, you would get paid a 5% commission. So on $1 million of retirement funding, you shifted it from one pot to another, you get paid $50,000.
That's enormous.
Oh, yeah. We're talking 1992, 1990. No, sorry. That's probably about 97, 95, 97.
Wow.
And I got to the point where I'd just say, you can't do that. Like, it's not in the client's best interests. Like, in that particular instance, and there were many like it, their undeducted purchase price on their pension would be recalculated. So they could never get the same benefit again, moving that money to our company. And he'd say, but that's your business. You need that money to get your bonus. I said, yeah, but I don't want a bonus at the expense of the client.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I don't. And so back in 1999, when I set out as capital partners, there was only one other truly fee-based advisory firm in
Perth or
in Perth.
Yeah.
And the guy who ran that, or one of the second generation guys who I was friends with, I am still friends with and admire him enormously. Of course, the landscape's changed a lot because commissions have been outlawed in financial planning other than for risk insurance. But around about 2019, I guess, we chose to get out of life insurance as well because we really wanted to be able to say we are independent financial advisors. We are sitting on the same side of the table as you, and that's what mattered to us. And so, yeah, from humble beginnings, a white Toyota Camry, a couple of business cards and a letterhead and a laptop computer. Now we're 55 people. We look after 770-odd families around Australia, and we have about $2 billion in assets under management. So it's pretty amazing.
Very.
Crazy, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you look at that and you go, well, out of those clients, how many of them are next generation clients?
Increasingly, we have a focus. The interesting thing about that is that, they talk about the trillions of dollars that are going to move from one generation to the next, the boomers to the next. That's going to take longer than everyone thinks because it's going to move from mum and dad to mum, and then it's going to move to the kids. I don't really think about that in commercial terms. Look at it this way. Financial planning helps mum and dad get the money organised. Estate planning helps get the money organised for the children when that ultimate happens. Stewardship is what gets the kids ready for the money. Okay, so we work with typically affluent clients, either the emerging affluent or the affluent. So I would describe emerging affluent as people who have between $1 million and $3 million of sort of investable assets, and then the affluent are people who have, between 3 and say $10 million of investable assets. So some of these kids eventually are going to inherit a lot of money. So we see it from a stewardship point of view. We want to help. There's no point us working really hard with mum and dad to make great decisions, only for kids who are not ready for that to inherit it.
How do you go about doing that? I'm assuming they have to be along for the ride.
Well, yeah, we do that a number of different ways, none of which are particularly formalised, but we do like to have family meetings. We like to make sure that kids of a certain age understand what mum and dad's estate plan looks like, and if something happens to mum and dad, that there is a plan in place. It's very common, particularly for business owners. So business owners, as you know, go about their lives and stuff just happens, and they take opportunities and they do things. And so structures tend to grow, and tax laws change and other laws change. And so your situation evolves in a way that's not always as neat and tidy as one would like it to be. You do, exactly. And you buy property for the wrong reasons. And all of a sudden you've got all these trade-off decisions that have to be made. And it's very common in our business for men of a certain age who have been business owners to get to the point where they say, you know what, I've actually created a bit of complexity here. And while I'm alive, it's fine because I'm all over it. But if something happens to me, then in my case, Robin is going to be, it's going to be hard because she hasn't been involved in all of that. Some, yes, of course, but hasn't been involved with all of that decision-making. And I had that moment, and that's where Robin and I became clients of Capital Partners, and we worked with Michael Hayward, who you know very well. And I think she now loves it. She's gone from being very reluctant, I don't want to have anything to do with that, you do the money things, to now she's very involved, understands it all. It's super cool. It's great.
As soon as you said that, it reminded me of something you said earlier about fear versus courage. And that type of situation reminds me of that, because I see it a lot where one party in the relationship wants to talk about the home or wants to talk about investing, and the other person hasn't really been along for the ride or hasn't done all the listening to the podcast or the reading. And so a lot of their concerns are around fear because they don't know how to ask or what to ask and when to ask it, whereas all of a sudden you provide them with enough knowledge and they then become courageous with what they want to ask.
Absolutely. And you would have seen this with Catherine, you know, the generation, millennial generation, I'm sure, you know, Generation Z is different as well, because you talk to Catherine, she's so articulate, so capable, so across all of the detail. So I do think generationally it's changing. But for baby boomers and Generation X, my generation, you know, born from 1965 onwards, I think there is a reality that fewer women are actively involved in the family finances, and we love changing that. And the first thing we do is have a conversation over a big piece of paper, and it's a structured conversation around the family values. Essentially, if they're aspirational, what goals? But there are a lot of families who get to the point where they don't have goals anymore, they've just got enough money. But then the question is, well, what's the money for? What's this money actually for? Because money's not there to be accumulated. Money's there
To provide choice.
Choice, and, you know, yes, you want enough money to be secure. You don't want to just hoard it, like some people do, but, you know. Yeah, so I think it's cool.
Yeah.
We're just as much in the education business as we are in the financial business, and I think there's so much good to be, there's so much good that comes out of that in terms of people making better financial decisions. We did a research project about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and we really narrowed down on what are the 3 big questions most successful families want answers to, right? The first question is, are we making the smartest decisions we can with our money? Are we managing the taxes the way we should? Are we making dumb mistakes that we're not even aware we're making, right? And so there is a thirst for people to say, I don't want to be the dunce here. I don't want to be the guy that's making really dumb decisions. So help me with that. So that's capability. We bring capability to the table and give them a sense of mastery. The second big question is, are the people I love and care about going to be okay no matter what? All right, now for your age, that's all to do with insurances and the like, and making sure there's adequate security in place in case something goes wrong. For older couples, it's, well, if anything happens to me, is Robin going to be okay? As we get to the end of our working lives, do we have enough money to see ourselves through? You know, are we going to need to help our parents? Are we going to choose to help our kids in some way or another? And I know you talk a lot about that on the podcast in terms of, you know, the bank of mum and dad, whether it's a loan or a gift, but also guarantorship, you know. So we call that wealth security. So are you really secure? And the third critical outcome that we find all successful families care about is, am I actually living the life I want? Am I really setting myself up to live the right life that I really, really want?
That I worked this hard to get to. Yeah.
Deferred gratification. Yeah. Deferred for what? Yeah. At what point does one stop the deferral and actually start really enjoying life?
Yeah.
You know, so those 3 critical outcomes, you know, wealth mastery, wealth security, and wealth enjoyment underpin our business. Yeah. And I think the reason I raise that is for your listeners, I'd really like them to think about that. What is their sense of wealth mastery? What is their sense of wealth security? What is their sense of wealth enjoyment? We all make trade-offs. And there is something about being a human that there's a lot of trade-off that you have to make. But are they the right trade-offs?
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, it resonates a lot for me, because there's also an element of being scared about what you're working so hard towards something, but I'm very similar to you. The journey is what I'm working on. I just love the journey and the hard work involved in the journey, but I don't actually know what the end is.
Do you need to know?
I don't know. Yeah. And that's kind of a bit scary, because you go, well, why are you working so hard other than to give your family choice and to make sure our daughters are looked after, and then my wife and Jemima's looked after. But otherwise,
well, the only question I'd put to you is: are you working too hard? Are you trading off more today than you need to?
yeah.
Maybe you need a good financial plan, Michael. That would solve. That would give you answers to some of those questions.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I think that's right. The only thing that's scary about that is if you have an inkling that your future might not be bigger than your past. I think being in, that going back to that idea of ambition being a destination, people say, oh, well, I'll be successful when I get to, and I don't know how your numbers work in your business, but let's say in financial planning, someone says, oh, well, I want to get to $1 million in client fees and then I'll have a really good life. Then what? Then what? One of the things I think makes our business a little bit unique, and this is not my idea, but I love latching on to what I think are great ideas. Our business is very much about return on vision, not return on investment. Now, our business is successful. It tends to work out fine. The returns on our firm are good, but I would argue that is a byproduct of us pursuing a vision. All right, so we want to serve as many Australian families as we can, and our purpose in doing that is to help them explore what's possible with money, and then really go after their true prosperity. Now, your true prosperity is going to be different to mine, all right? So everyone's going to have a different idea of what prosperity means for them. But just that idea of exploring what's possible with money goes right to the core of those three critical outcomes, right? And then for our team, our purpose is to help them create a bigger future and put them on a path where they achieve more than they ever thought they possibly could. And we've got many, many examples of people who would say, I never thought I would achieve what I've achieved.
There's certainly something about making sure someone leaves the business, because everyone eventually leaves at some point, and they're better off after because they've been within the business.
Better off, better people.
Yeah.
I'd love to think that most people who have worked at Capital Partners over a period of time are better people for the experience.
There must have been maybe not one, maybe a couple of sliding door moments of whether you continue within the business or whether I'm sure there would have been some larger companies knocking on your door to purchase Capital Partners, I'm guessing?
Fewer than you think. I think we've been approached seriously 3 times. And we've had lots of knocks on the door of, people coming and saying, oh, would you consider it? Because we're return on vision, we're not really yearning for a capital event. At the moment we have 16 owners in our business, which sounds like a lot. The original 3 owners, myself included, I'm starting the process of selling down. The other 2 have almost done that. So amongst 13 of those 16 owners, they now own 60% of the business. So it's really their business to pursue what they want to do with it. So, there's nothing in a rule book that says the business can never be sold. But I do think that these sorts of businesses, wealth management businesses, are much better in private hands than they are in institutional ownership, because as soon as institutional ownership comes into the picture, you've got a different set of values, yes, very different set of values, and our values are quite unique. But you've also got different money aspirations. They are return on investment, so they want to maximise the return on their investment over the shortest possible time, whereas we don't care about that. We're happy to take our time to do things. Yeah. We're not lazy and we're not complacent, but we're not also in a tearing hurry to get everything done tomorrow.
The reason I mentioned the sliding doors is because there's clearly a blueprint of being able to have a succession without completely removing yourself and letting it go into this new generation of hands, their hands, and they take control while you're also still on that path with them. I love the idea of that. I truly do. I think if I could achieve something like that at some point and have another generation come through and drive this even further than what I could ever have done, that's what I find that truly special. Is there something about that you always thought would be the next part or next iteration of Capital Partners, or did it just kind of happen? Like, did it just develop?
Firstly, for you, you can do that, and if you really want to do that, just do that.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's succession thinking. Yeah. You know, there's a fellow by the name of Bill Withers who wrote a book, Succession Thinking, and I really love it. You know, and he has 5 principles of succession thinking, which is create a vision for the business, long-term vision for the business, which is very detailed. Yeah. Have role clarity. Yeah. And that's what's making my succession easy for me, at least. I'm not sure how easy it is for Charmaine, but it's making it easy for me. Is that there's role clarity. Yeah. So I'm not getting involved in stuff that I have no business getting involved in because I've handed over those roles. The third is create culture beyond the founder. The fourth is create leadership beyond the founder. And then the fifth is create your way. So in your case, the Tusk Finance way. In our case, the Capital Partners way. That's the way we do things. And when people come in, they sign up to our way and it works. If it doesn't work, we change it.
Ours is literally called the Tusk Way. Yeah. That's actually how ours is called. Yeah.
I'll give you a copy of Succession Thinking. You'll really enjoy it. And you can start doing some of the stuff now. Yeah. So the question you asked me was about my intent. This is an evolution. I joke about this just being and I think most business it's just a social experiment. And we're trying to do really great things. One of my core beliefs is if you want happy, healthy clients, you have to have a happy, healthy team. You cannot have happy, healthy clients if that's incongruous with having the team. Like if the team's miserable, clients are going to feel that. Yeah. Of course they are. If the team is literally bursting out of their skin, saying, "Man, this is exciting, and I'm having fun, and I love serving my clients," clients feel that, right? They feel it. And so much of this is an evolution, and so much of it, I think, comes from what we discussed earlier, just having a curious mind. Yeah. I'm always reading, always exploring new ideas. And there's a saying, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I've always believed that. And you know, when things come my way, and I think, okay, that could work for us, I think I'll research that a bit deeper. Yeah. Then that's what you do. Yeah. You know, I think business owners, and I guess I speak to business owners because that's really all I know. You really do have to invest. Now, we've always been coached. I've always been coached, always been mentored. And a lot of people would look at that over the years. It's a bit like financial advice. People pay quite a lot of money for financial advice, and they say, "Oh man, that's a lot of money. Why are you spending that?" But the outcomes you get accelerate you so much more than if you tried to hustle it out as a rugged individual. And so I love the idea of always being coached. And I think that's probably true for people who are in executive roles as well. Yeah. You know, get a coach. Yeah. Help see the wood for the trees.
I think the part that I'm quite enjoying around this podcast is also talking to other business owners and learning from them, and you realise that you're all just trying your best. It's hard,
yeah,
and no one really sees the effort and the outlay. And so when you start realising that other people are experiencing the same thing, you go, "Oh, actually, it's not just me." Yeah. Similar to parenting in a way.
Yeah, probably. You know, I think there's a special handshake in business ownership where I think a lot of people in the community look at business owners and they see the boats and they see nice houses and that sort of thing, and think, "Oh, you're lucky." But there really, as you say, Michael, I think you're right in that no one can really understand just how much you've got on the line. You literally have everything on the line every single day, and that's fundamentally different. It is not for the faint-hearted. And I don't want to take this down a political path, but I get really cross. There is so little attention really given to small, medium enterprise business in this country, other than layering it further with more and more regulation and expectation. And so, small business really is the engine room.
What does it employ? Almost 60% of the population?
Certainly
or so?
50. SMEs, like 50% of the population. And then I think another 20% is big business. And then the remainder is public sector. So it's huge. It's huge. And look, I don't want this to be a rant session for business, but at the end of the day, and I use this saying a lot, business owners get paid last. Don't be talking to me, for this is to any of our other business owners, don't be talking to me about what you want. We get paid last. Like, we look after our team first, and we look after our clients, and then whatever's left at the end of the day is for us to divvy up. And so our objective is to make sure the business is successful so that there's something to divvy up. But the people who are in, we have a social obligation to make sure that people employed by us get a great deal, have a good life. I don't have an expectation that people should be working from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. I think that's nuts. There are certain jobs where people choose to do that. They earn a lot of money, lawyers, for example, or corporate finance people. I actually want the people that work at Capital Partners to have a really good life.
Yeah. It's we've got 5 staff now. And
well done.
It's
You'll start getting taxed for that soon.
Yeah, I know.
Payroll tax.
I know.
Love it.
And you're looking at it, and some days and some nights, I think you're actually providing, because without the business, those 5 people may work somewhere else, whatever.
Of course
it
they
might be.
would.
But you are providing them the ability to live with the income that they get, and there's something quite heavy sometimes. When you go, well, actually, if we weren't doing what we were doing, then that wouldn't be the case, and so we need to continue that.
But that's only half the social contract. The other half of the social contract is what they deliver to you. The love and the attention and the care that they give your clients. Because for you to try and do this by yourself, it's just you wouldn't be sitting in this room with me right now if you didn't have a great team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a chance. No. So that's where I have a really strong sense of social obligation to make sure the people that work with Capital Partners get really well looked after.
Yeah. And you can see I obviously help some of them, and you can see in the way that they talk about the people that they're interacting with, whether it's Michael Hayward or Catherine or any number of them. And now you've got postgrads. Is there a little team of?
Yeah. Well, that's come about because the government changed the rules some years ago after the Hayne Royal Commission, and it brought in education standards. And I think the year after those education standards came in, Curtin University graduated 25 new qualified financial advisors. 25 for the whole of Western Australia. And so we are in a skills crisis that is beyond belief. And so we've built this little team called the CAT. They call themselves the CAT, which stands for the Centralised Associate Team. And they come into our business as young. It's a fantastic program, I think. And they come into the business and, I talk to them every day. And I just think they're awesome. They're just so talented, so capable, lovely people, curious to learn, committed to a bigger future. And we just teach them from day one the basics of what financial planning is. And so we had to build a queuing system so that lots of tasks, and they are some of the more basic tasks, go into a queue and they pick a task and they do the task and they learn how it is and they get taught and they graduate to doing more and more, complex tasks, and then without too much delay, we hope, they transfer as an associate into one of our advisory teams and they really start serving clients. So
That's amazing.
it's kind of cool. Well, you have to pivot. Like, there's no one to employ. Like, there is no one to employ with financial advisor qualifications. So we bring them in and we have to sell them on the idea that a financial advisory career is a good thing. And if they, obviously, we're going to have some people who come and people who go. We're not going to have 100% retention in that CAT team. But, you know, I think they're really enjoying it. Yeah. We're enjoying having them. They're doing great work.
New lease of life.
Yeah, and it's just a different approach to solve an age-old problem is how do you find really high-quality people? You know, our clients are demanding, not in a nasty kind of way, a grinchy kind of way, but they're demanding in terms of their expectations. You know, they're serious business people and they're serious executives, and most of our clients are successful in life, so they have an expectation of how things ought to be, and so we have to fulfil that.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost the complete opposite of what the mortgage broking, the whole industry at the moment, where there's just this gluttony of mortgage brokers. The complete opposite, and I believe that we will go closer and closer towards what...
Because there's no barriers to entry,
Correct.
Is that right? Yeah. So you're getting more than... The world's not fair, but you're getting more than your fair share, aren't you?
I agree, yeah.
So why do you reckon you're getting more of your fair share?
Well, because I don't think there's any regulation on the service that needs to be provided ongoing. Yep. We've spoken about this before, and I feel that if you don't have the capacity as a business to look after clients on an ongoing basis, then that's not fair for you to have signed them up initially. Yeah. And so you need to have a team or at least people dedicated to looking after those people. And if you're not, then you're getting paid to look after those people on a regular basis. Yeah. And you don't have any obligation to actually do that. Yeah.
Well, do you remember that time we were banking with CBA and we were paying like so much more than you could get at, say, Macquarie Bank, where we ended up, and there was probably lots of others, and they just wouldn't budge. And that's that thing called a loyalty tax, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if my broker, thankfully you were my broker, but if my broker hadn't pointed that out to me, I'd still be with Commonwealth Bank. Yeah. And that transaction, changing from Commonwealth Bank, I had more debt then than I do now, but that transaction saved us $18,000 a year.
Plus the fact that CBA don't allow offset accounts attached to a trust.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden you add in a particular feature and it's more.
Yeah,
and you think,
well, I hate to think what we've saved there. But you're right. If I were none the wiser, I would have continued down that path. And that's where I think it's just such a great opportunity, Michael, is to build that service model out, because that's a true differentiator. And I think that's been true of our business too, is that if our purpose is to help clients explore what's possible with money and help them then really go after their idea of true prosperity, you can't do that in a set and forget kind of way. That's just,
No, you can't.
All the time just thinking, well, what else? And what else? And what else could we be doing?
So out of the 5 employees, one of those is now truly dedicated to post-settlement.
Yeah, cool. That's great.
And it's my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's my dad, and it's amazing. So that is his sole role.
Has he always been in Perth?
No, he's in Darwin. So he worked for my mum for 15 years in their real estate company, and mum decided that his job wasn't needed anymore, and so he was on the scrap heap, ready to be picked up, and I thought that is the perfect person for what I need.
Awesome.
It's amazing. So every day we catch up, and he's just purely client care.
Man, that's great.
That is him to a T. That's all he wants to do, is just make sure people are looked after on an ongoing basis.
Do you know, Daniel Pink is one of my favourite authors. His book Drive, and he talks about the core things. You know, we talk about our 3 critical outcomes, but the three critical things that people need to maximise their drive at work are the opportunity to master what they're doing, and not always being told what they should be doing and when and how and all the rest of it, but really, truly find mastery. The second is a sense of autonomy, being able to just get it done and not too many rules. And the third is a sense of meaning. And, you know, you look at your work, you look at my work, financial planning, compared with, say, working in a social enterprise. You know, your sense of meaning in a social enterprise, food bank or similar, you're going to have a very close connection with the meaning for the outside world. But I think one of the things we as employers need to really think about is how do we create a deep sense of belonging within business? And I think you do that through teamwork. Well, further, you do it through creating a sense of belonging. I think that's really important, but also through teamwork. And people just love being in teamwork.
Absolutely. And getting praised within teamwork.
Of course.
And so I took a little bit of your appreciation wall.
Oh, the values wall.
Values wall.
Oh, yeah, that's a cool thing.
And we have Fan Mail Friday, and so on Fridays
that's so good.
We deliver that. And you the praise within teamwork, and all of a sudden that bond grows a little bit stronger every time.
So here's the thing with values, is that let's take Qantas. I'm going to have a crack at Qantas, another crack at, I like having a crack at Qantas. Such an easy target. I bet they've got stated corporate values.
Somewhere written down.
Written down. None of which says treat your customers like shite, right? You know, but they did, and they're probably getting better. But, you know, to cancel people's flights and then not give their money back, that's just egregious. Like, that's so bad. Most companies have the same words written on the wall. And I think that's a huge challenge for business owners, is how do you truly breathe life into your values, which is what you're doing with your Fan Mail Friday.
Yeah, trying to.
Great. Really great.
Yeah. It's, as I said, you're looking at what other people have done before you, and you're just taking those little bits and pieces.
So curiosity, just pick it up. You could never have known about that until we talked about it. So now you know about it, you do it. You implement it, you do it. I think with values, it's really important to stay away from the typical words like respect and integrity and da-da-da, you know, because that's the stuff that just passed on the wall and no one. Our values are really simple. Think beyond self. You know, before you think about your own needs, think about the client and think about your teammates. And that's me as a leader too. We believe in servant leadership. And so we have no issues with people working from home and stuff like that because we trust them. You know, if they need to work from home, they work from home and they get it done. So think beyond self. Do the right thing. Even when nobody's looking, especially when nobody's looking. You know, these are businesses that are built on trust, right? The third is live above the line. You know, there's so much you see in the corporate world of toxic behaviour, and all effective behaviour happens above the line from a place of courageous humility or compassion. Nothing good comes from pride and fear. And we're all below the line sometime, all right? But if we can be really conscious of living above the line and doing the right thing by people and, you know, just being nice, you know, helping people feel as though they belong, not keeping score, not you know, holding grudges, all that sort of stuff.
I've never heard that before.
What's that?
Live above the line.
Oh, the brilliant business called Heart Styles. We've spent 6-7 years investing in Heart Styles, and it helps people build character. Yeah. Helps people live above the line. It's very, very cool.
Love it. I've never heard it before.
And the final thing is play as one team.
Yeah.
No one succeeds alone. So don't be a rugged individual. I got to stop. I tried to turn it on you. I tried to become the host and make you be the podcast guest a little while ago, but I'm just going to ramble for if you let me.
I love it. I love listening to. I admire you a lot. I love what you've done with Capital Partners, and obviously don't see everything behind the scenes and all the hard work and the grit and with a business card with your Corolla in '97, and you don't see that. But I love where you've got to now, and you've gone, well, hang on, let's continue to be curious. Let's continue to learn, and that's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're a book guy. So, every time I get a new book, I got hundreds of books I haven't read. I just wade through them as I go. But it's, that curiosity I think is a wonderful trait for a business owner to have.
Sometimes books hit you at a certain time that you need them.
That's so right.
And I certainly, going right back to that first question around that mindset and did you ever have a moment, my one was reading Robin Sharma's The Monk That Sold the Ferrari when I was 23, 24. And after reading that, the whole world changed. I went, wow, that's what can be achieved. And so that was my moment. But obviously there's all the other little ones in between. But reading's so special.
What are you enjoying most about your success? Like you set your business up,
18 months ago.
Years ago? Only 18 months. That's nuts. What are you enjoying about business and business success?
I really like getting a seat at the table now. That's what I'm finding. I find that people look at you and treat you that little bit differently by having your name on the door, let's call it. And so I feel that there's just a little bit more, not respect, but there's something else. There's something I can't quite put my finger on it that I can feel when you're talking with people, especially other business owners. And I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I'm quite proud of that. I really love that we've got Dad as an employee. That really makes me feel quite. It's really quite special. And so I think there's all these different things, but then obviously the hard work and Jemima and I, just as in my wife and I, just working at night, and our girls have no idea how hard we work. We're there, or I'm trying to be there as much as I can for pickups and drop-offs, and my wife is there as well. And we're there for bedtimes, mornings, all that sort of stuff. And so I think being a business owner allows you to do that. They have no idea, and they never will at some point.
Oh, yes, they will.
At some point,
they will. You'll start having business type conversations around the dinner table.
So we do, and I remember you talking about that with Tim in the last podcast. So we do have a little bit of that, and watching our daughter, both of them have these little wooden laptops, and they pull them out every now and then on a Saturday or Sunday, and they go, we're going to work. So there is obviously a bit of that that's creeping in, which I don't mind. That they just...
That's an old-fashioned value. Like, you can't expect anything for nothing, right? And, working hard for what you get is a really, really virtuous value, I think. I do think we probably have a little bit of a culture of people wanting handouts. We are third in the world on median wealth.
Third?
In this country.
Third? Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
We're on median wealth, not on average wealth, on median wealth. We're way richer than the United States. Like the United States, like 10th, and we're third after Luxembourg and Switzerland, I think. So we're a very, very rich country. And yes, there's a significant dispersion between the richest of us and the poorest of us. But, you talk about Australia being a lucky country for those people who are willing to work and are willing to, and able, and I know there are people who are not able, but for those who are willing to work, I really do believe you can still get ahead in this country.
It just takes time.
Takes time.
It takes time.
And you can't subscribe to that whole thing, the world's not fair. The odds are stacked against me, which you hear all the time in the whole property market thing. And it is tough. I get it. But it's possible.
Oh, it's possible. There's so many schemes and initiatives it's so possible.
Yeah. So if the world's not fair, do you accept that as a universal truth, or do you say, okay, how can I be smart and tip the scales in my favour?
Yeah. There's a fair bit of Jim Rohn in what you just said.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. He's probably been quite a big influence on me.
Yeah. Big on me. So,
but the world is not fair. Yeah. There really are no rules. Yes, there's laws and all the rest, but there's no one saying you can't be successful. In our business, some of the wealthiest clients we have never been near a university. And I really mean that. They've never stepped foot on a university campus. They're boilermakers and they're builders and carpenters and people like that. And the third is no one's really in charge. Like the government thinks they're in charge, but in terms of our individual liberties and how we live our lives, we've just got to get on with it. Always make your future bigger than your past.
Well, that's my vision anyway.
Yeah, totally.
I've loved today. I finish off every episode by talking about what we're proud of. And the reason I do it came from talking with our eldest, she's just about to turn 5, and I love what we've instilled in her. She tells us what she's proud of all the time. Nice. So I'm proud I did this, or I'm proud I did this, and listening to a 5-year-old tell you that is really special. I love it. And then when I've brought it into this and hearing an adult tell you what they're proud of, you can see them go into this space of, oh, I haven't been able to say that for a while. Yeah. And I feel it's really important that we do that because there is a bit of tall poppy syndrome in our society. So long-winded way of saying, what are you most proud of personally, professionally? What comes to mind when I ask you about what are you proud of?
When Robin and I we have a thing called a wealth map conversation. It's the first big conversation we have with our clients. It's about values and goals and priorities and how you're doing stuff today and what needs to change for the future. And I think when Robin and I did that conversation with Michael, one of my big values was to help my boys grow up to be good men. And I think they're well on their path to doing that. And I'm very grateful to the men in my life, so in particular my dad, who taught me the value of hard work, among other things, but also my father-in-law, Hugh, who is a wonderful steward, intergenerational steward. And even 90 this year, he has very close relationships with his grandchildren. And he's not backward in suggesting how they might be doing things differently if necessary. I think I've just been extraordinarily lucky to have those two men in my life. And as a steward, that's what I try to emulate for my boys. And and some of their friends have gravitated to that. And that's lovely too. Yeah. They might not like everything I've got, every opinion I hold, but I think that's probably the thing I'm proudest of.
They're 3 pretty cool young fellas. Yeah, they're all right. They're all right. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I love it. I know that other people will love it. And
it's been a lot of fun, Michael. Thanks for being. Thanks for listening to the ramblings of an old man.
Thanks, David. Cheers. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could like, comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.